Picking the right tools for test automation can totally make or break a software project. I mean, if you get it right, you're building on this solid foundation for success. But if you get it wrong, well, the whole thing could come crashing down. So today, we're going to grab our hard hats and figure out how to choose the perfect toolkit. I want you to think about it like this. Building software is basically a big construction project. And you just wouldn't try to build a skyscraper with only a hammer, right? The sheer scale and, frankly, the complexity of modern software demands a much more sophisticated set of power tools to get the job done right. So, what are these power tools in the software world anyway? Well, that's what we call test automation. It's really just using specialized software to run your tests automatically. And this is the crucial part. Compare the actual results to what you expected them to be. These are the nail guns, the power saws, and the laser levels of our software construction site. So here's our blueprint for today. First, we'll get into the pros and cons of automation. Then, we'll talk about how to stock your toolbox. After that, we'll look at whether you should buy or build your own kit. We'll also read some of that owner's manual fine print. And we'll end with a final blueprint you can take with you. Let's get started. First up, the big debate. Automation sounds fantastic in theory, right? But just like any powerful tool, it comes with its own set of advantages and some very, very real potential drawbacks you really need to think about before you even start shopping. This slide really captures that trade-off perfectly. On one hand, automation gives you these incredible advantages. It's way faster, it's more consistent, and you get feedback quicker. But on the other side of that saw blade, you've got significant costs, you've got development time, and there's a real risk that your tests will be too rigid and just break easily when the software itself changes. And let's be super clear about those costs. It's not just the sticker price of the software. The initial investment often includes new hardware, training for your team, and maybe even hiring specialists like a test automation engineer to manage these complex systems. It's a serious financial commitment. Okay, so you've weighed the pros and cons and you've decided automation is worth the investment. Great. Now comes the really hard part, stocking your toolbox. I mean, there are thousands of options out there. The key is to match the right tool to the specific job you have at hand. The very first question you need to ask has absolutely nothing to do with technology. It's about people. Who's on your construction crew? What are their skills? Because believe me, the experience level of your team is going to point you toward entirely different categories of tools. So this slide lays out the two main paths. If your team has pretty limited programming experience, you should be looking at low-code or even no-code solutions. They're just much more accessible. But if your team is full of skilled programmers, you'll want to choose tools that use the same language as the software you're testing. This makes everything from debugging to cross-training way more efficient. Okay, so you've figured out your crew's skills. The next critical question is, what part of the project are you actually working on? Are you finishing the exterior facade that everyone sees, or are you deep inside installing the hidden plumbing and wiring that makes the whole thing work? And this is exactly why a one-size-fits-all approach just doesn't work. There's a massive difference between testing the user interface, that's the facade your users see, and the web services, which are like the hidden plumbing. For the UI, you need tools that can pretend to be a user, clicking and typing. But for the services, you need tools that can check if data is flowing correctly through all those internal connections, those APIs that the user never even sees. Now for a major strategic decision. Do you go to the store and buy a complete off-the-shelf toolkit from a single brand? Or do you build a custom kit yourself, picking and choosing the best components from the world of open source? There are some really clear trade-offs here. Commercial tools. They offer a polished all-in-one solution, often with professional support, which can get you started faster. But those licensing costs can be pretty steep. On the other hand, building your own solution from open source tools gives you incredible flexibility and can be cheaper. The catch? You need some serious in-house expertise to build it and, just as importantly, to maintain it. Okay, this next part is so critical. Before you run off and start using all your shiny new power tools, you absolutely must read the owner's manual, especially the fine print. You have to understand the fundamental limitations of what even the best automation tools can, and more importantly, cannot do. Look, test automation is not magic. It can't automate everything a human can test. It definitely can't check for subjective things, like whether an app is beautiful or if it's just frustrating to use. It only verifies exactly what it has been programmed to check, and nothing more. And it can only check results that a machine can actually interpret, like, is this number 5, not, does this color scheme look good? This quote really hits the nail on the head. An automated test oracle is just a fancy way of saying a source of truth, a defined correct outcome. If your test doesn't have a clear, verifiable, machine-readable answer, you can't reliably automate it. The tool is just a very fast, very precise checker. It's not a thinker. All right, we've gone from the foundation all the way to the roof. We've talked strategy, tools, and limitations. So let's wrap it all up and draft a final, simple blueprint that you can use for your own projects. When you boil it all down, it really comes to these three essential steps. 1. Assess your team's skills first. That's number 1. 2. Clearly define the job. Are you testing the UI or the back-end services? And 3. Analyze the total cost of ownership and make that strategic call between a commercial product or a custom open-source solution. And with that, your toolbox is ready. But I want you to remember, the best tools in the entire world are pretty useless if the blueprint itself is flawed. Tools are just a means to an end. So the real question isn't about your toolkit. It's about what you build with it. Are you building something that people will truly love?